Thanks. I'll start over again. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Audit Committee of October 28th, 2024 for the City of New York. I'd like to have the Secretary do a roll call.
Good morning, everyone. Representing our private members, Michael Spitzer, Chair. Present. Larry and Angelo.
Present.
Mark Kaplan. Present. Representing Mayor Eric Adams, Manhan Chung.
Present.
Representing Comptroller Brad Lander, Jacqueline Thompson. Present. Representing Public Advocate Jamani Williams, Wesley Paisley.
Present.
We have a quorum, and we have Marcia Van Wagner joining us via Zoom.
Good morning, Marcia. Next up, I'd like to have a motion to accept the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held June 26, 2024. Next up on the agenda is the financial statement management letter for the New York City Housing Authority. Yeah.
Record, I want to recuse myself.
Mark is recusing himself because he's on the Audit Committee for the Housing Authority.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jill Strohmeyer. I'm a managing director with Deloitte, the external auditors for the New York City Housing Authority. If okay with the committee members, we'll start with the management letter comments first and then move into NYCHA management's presentation related to the financial statements. So this year there were 3 management letter comments, all low-level deficiencies. So as a reminder to the committee, as part of our audit, we do look at internal controls. We don't rely on internal controls, and we don't issue an opinion on internal controls, but we do assess internal controls to determine our risk assessment and where we'll be performing further audit procedures. As a result, there could be 3 levels of severity when it comes to an internal control deficiency, material weakness being the most severe, significant deficiency, or a deficiency. The 3 in this letter are deficiencies, so the lowest level. 2 of the deficiencies relate to information technology or IT matters, really related to password configuration and ensuring that passwords are reset upon expiration policy. And the second IT comment relates to user deprovisioning, essentially making certain that when someone leaves the organization that all access and responsibilities are removed from the relevant systems. Management has responded, has a plan in place to address these comments as we move forward. I don't know if there's any comments that NYCHA would like to make related to upcoming efforts, but we have been talking with management. We are comfortable with the response that they provided within this letter related to these 2 comments. And then the third comment relates to risk assessment. Risk assessment is a really important part of what we do as auditors and what we look at. We had conversations with NYCHA management during the year around their internal risk assessment process. And NYCHA does have a has a process in place, I should say. It's just not formalized. So this recommendation is really about formalizing the conclusions around your internal risk assessment, where risk may be, where fraud could occur, and then also just overall, ERM and enterprise risk management considerations. So again, management has provided a response here, and we're comfortable with management's response. I'd be happy to answer any questions as it relates to these 3 comments if the committee has anything.
Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding the management letter? Wesley?
I have a question, just curious. When an employee is terminated, what part of the agency is responsible for eliminating their password and access on the computer system?
That's a combination between both IT and HR. HR will know, they'll be the first ones to know that an employee is separating or terminating, and then they will kick that over to IT, and the accounts will be disabled.
It stays on now. Wow. If there are no other questions or comments about the management letter, can you go on to the financials? And can you introduce for the record, like for the minutes, the other parties that are here from the Housing Authority?
Hi, I'm Jeff Lesnoy. I'm the Vice President and Controller of the New York City Housing Authority, and we'll go down the side here.
Good morning, I'm Cassie Ward, and I am the Vice President of Internal Audit and Assessment at NYCHA.
Good morning, I'm Eva Trimble. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at NYCHA.
I'm Anil Agrawal, Assistant Director of Audit at NYCHA.
Good morning, Jason Goldberg, Director-in-Chief of Corporate Affairs.
All the way out in left field. Thank you. So, like, could you please, whatever remarks you have about the financials?
Sure. Good morning, Audit Committee members. We'll present the 2023 financial statements, which Deloitte has issued an unmodified opinion, reflecting that the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and are presented fairly. So before we get into the meat of the financial statements, I'd like to talk about some of the new GASB pronouncements that were effective or significant in the year 2023. First, the GASB 96 statement adoption, which we implemented in 2023, we restated in 2022. And GASB 96 defines a subscription-based information technology arrangement called SPIDA as a contract that conveys the right to use another company's software in a non-cancelable transaction. For those qualifying transactions, NYCHA has recorded the right of use asset and a corresponding liability. This is separately disclosed in our financial statement notes. We reviewed approximately 150 transactions, and only 10 qualified with an insignificant amount, $6 million of net right of use assets in 2023 and $2 million in 2022. Expense recognition process changed in terms of timing and line items in financial statements, but also insignificant as far as dollars are concerned. While it wasn't the 2023 implementation, it did have a very significant effect on 2023, so we'll talk about it for a minute. That's GASB 87, which the statement establishes a uniform approach for lease accounting based on principle that leases are financing of underlying assets. So the lessee prospective impact, and this is basically for our office space at 90 Church and 250 Broadway in Long Island City. Right of use capital assets was about $746 million in 2023 and $782 million in 2022, with a corresponding lease liability independently amortizing. We had a lessor prospective impact of $22 million of lease receivables in 2023 and $24 million in 2022, with similar amounts in deferred inflow of resources independently amortizing. Talking about other GASBs that were effective in 2023, we adopted GASB 94, public-private partnerships, but have determined that NYCHA's transactions do not qualify as they do not meet the exchange-like transaction criteria. We adopted GASB 99, which clarified various prior GASB statements such as GASB 87, GASB 94, and GASB 96, but this had no material impact on our financial statements. A couple of other items before we get into the face of the financial statements that are significant drivers. Rent collections. In 2019, our baseline year, pre-COVID, we had $1,058 million of rent collections. In 2020, the first year of COVID, it dropped to $967 million. 2021, $921 million. 2022, $870 million. So we see a downward trend there. But in 2023, we have a nice spike up, $1,028 million, which includes $124 million from the Emergency Rental Assistance Program collections, the ERAP program as it's referred to. But excluding ERAP, there's still a 4% increase in rent collections over the prior year, despite the fact that we have 5,200 apartment units which were transferred to developers that are no longer getting rent in 2023 under the Permanent Affordability Commitment Together initiative, the PACT initiative. So our rent is ticking upwards at this point in time. We have not reached the 2019 base year, but there are steps being taken to get closer to that as time goes on. So while no impact on the 2023 financial statements, we collected an additional $36 million of ERAP funds in 2024 and have potential for up to $35 million more in supplemental ERAP program before the end of 2024. Beginning in 2025, a separate program, the Home Art program, has the opportunity to provide $150 million of rental arrears support for our tenants. So we have some good things that are coming up to collect our rent arrears. One other significant item before we get into the face of the financial statements, talk about pollution remediation obligation, specifically for lead-based paint. As XRF testing for lead continues, an increase in positive lead findings from 35% of apartments to 43% of apartments, which resulted in a $754 million special item expense within the financial statements. And largely a function of positive lead increases, lead-based paint obligations increased from $3.7 billion in 2022 to $4.3 billion in 2023. So if I could direct everyone to turn to page 30 if they have the financial statements. We'll start off kind of a little backwards, but we'll look at the statement of revenues, expenses, and change of net position. Has everyone gotten there? Okay. So we'll start with operating revenues, which decreased by $86 million, or 8%, to $976 million. And there's a story behind this. In 2022, we recorded a $116 million reversal of allowance for doubtful accounts for tenant receivables and a corresponding increase to tenant revenues due to the expectation of collections of ERAP funds in 2023. So, that's an accrual basis versus a cash basis. We generated the revenues for that or reversed the allowance in 2022, and we got the cash in 2023. As a result, tenant revenues were $56 million lower in 2023. But excluding the 2022 ERAP adjustment, operating revenues increased by $30 million or 3%. If you go down to the next large line item, operating expenses increased by $453 million, 9.5% to $5.2 billion, including within operating expenses of rent for leased dwellings, which is our Section 8 program, increased by $211 million due to higher housing assistance payments per voucher and an increase in voucher units. However, this expense was completely offset by $258 million increase in Section 8 housing choice voucher subsidy. So it's basically a wash. We pay out rent expense and we collect subsidy from HUD. Operating expenses in total have been impacted by $92 million of gross wage increases accrued from recent collective bargaining agreements. This amount is distributed within both general administrative and maintenance and operation expenses. General and administrative expenses up by $167 million, largely due to general inflationary increases, gross wage increases, and due to increase in pension expense, which was largely driven by changes in investment income on pension plan and increases in interest on pension liability. Maintenance and operation expenses increased by $40 million, largely due to inflationary increases and gross wage increases. Other post-employment benefits, OPEB, expense increased by $22 million due to change in discount rate assumption from 4.31% in 2022 to 4% in 2023. Depreciation expense increased by $34 million as capital expenditures continue to rise. And partially offsetting the above expense increase is utilities, which declined by $38 million. Next major caption, non-operating revenues, which grew by $419 million, or 13% to $3.6 billion. The largest piece of this includes subsidies and grants, which increased by $378 million. And included in subsidies and grants, public housing subsidy, our Section 9 subsidy from HUD, was $1,323 million, up by $112 million. Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Subsidy, $1.7 billion, up by $258 million. In the City of New York subsidies, slight reduction from 2022 at $312 million. On to the next caption in non-operating income is investment income, which is $16 million higher in 2023 due to higher interest rates in depository accounts. There was a $17 million net loss on real estate transactions in 2023, primarily due to allowance for uncollectible accounts provided for on certain loans and notes. The positive change in fair value of investments on bond portfolio was $19 million in 2023, in contrast to a $42 million loss in 2022, as midterm interest rates declined in 2023, and previous mark-to-market losses were recovered. $52 million of interest expense in 2023 is fairly constant with 2022, as debt portfolio has fixed interest rates. Note that interest expense also includes interest on lease liabilities and subscription liabilities as per the new GASBs. And the special item of $754 million in 2023 is due to higher positive lead findings of 43% in 2023 versus 35% in 2022. Capital contributions of $1,093 million in 2023, up by $287 million. The largest capital contributions were from Federal Public Housing Capital Fund, $511 million up by $184 million. City and State of New York, $392 million, up by $186 million. And FEMA disaster grants, $156 million, down by $72 million. The net position of $943 million at December 2023 is down by $261 million from 2022. Note, if not for special item related to lead cost, 2023 net position would have been $493 million greater than 2022 net position. So before I go on to the statement of net position, are there any questions on this? Okay, so if you could turn to page 29 then. The total cash and investments, which is sprinkled in several different line items between current and non-current, is $1,187 million versus $1,284 million at 12/31/22, for a $97 million decrease, largely due to continued shortfalls in rental collections versus billed, growing expenses and timing differences, and reimbursements from grantors. Accounts receivable net decreased by $154 million, largely due to decreases from FEMA, decreases in tenant receivable, partially offset by increases from the city due to the lead abatement program and amounts to being reimbursed for gross wage increases. Capital assets in the aggregate increased by $693 million to $10.5 billion due to continued increase in building improvements. Current liabilities are $1.5 billion, $121 million lower than 2022. Much of this reduction is due to decreases in the portion of lead paint remediation costs previously classified as current in 2022 and since reclassified as non-current. OPEB non-current liability increased by $210 million, largely due to decrease in discount rate. This increase was largely offset by $239 million decrease in deferred inflow of resources on OPEB. And lastly, pollution remediation liability non-current increased by $723 million, largely due to the increase in lead positivity rate to 43%. So with that said, I've completed the presentation for the statements. Are there any questions?
Could you identify the role, and I think it's the title, the special master? And what
Special master?
in the oversight that the federal government,
The monitor, the federal monitor?
yes.
Jason, are you?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, in connection with the federal monitor?
Jason, I can start.
What is the role of the federal monitor, and is the federal monitor still overseeing the operations of the housing authority?
Yes, so we are still under federal monitorship. HUD and the Southern District with the City of New York appointed a new firm to be the monitor. The first 5 years of the monitorship was under one firm. Now we have Jenner and Block as the monitor overseeing the implementation of our HUD agreement that we signed in 2019 with the city and HUD. I just want to clarify your question because you did ask about a special master, which we also have, which is different from the federal monitor. The special master is court appointed as part of the settlement of the Baez suit regards to mold implementation. And so we also work with a special master appointed by the courts to oversee our implementation for mold on the Baez case.
But because part of it is, and quickly reading all this material, which got all over the place now, where is that in the notes or in the financials about these overseers?
Well, I think we do refer to the fact that we're under HUD guidance and compliance and that there's a federal monitor, but there aren't financial aspects to that from a financial statement perspective. I mean, we're in compliance with all the accounting rules, the GASB rules, the GAAP rules, and that's what we're citing in here.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't there a certain cost to this litigation? Because we had other agencies come to us and discuss their litigation matters that are bringing an extra cost onto their budget.
The cost of the federal monitor is actually paid for by the City of New York. They're under contract through the city's law department. They're not contracted or paid for by NYCHA because it would be a conflict. So the contract for the monitor is under the city's law department. And as Mr. Lesnoy said, there's no financial review specifically laid out in the HUD agreement. It's all about operations, so there's no financial auditing component in there.
So they don't oversee anything financial,
No,
even though it's the HUD agreement?
correct. The HUD agreement lays out deliverables in regards to operational performance and compliance with environmental hazards.
But all that leads to a financial component.
Yes, it requires significant resources to comply with those mandates, but there's no direct review required by the monitor over our financials.
Right, in note 21, we refer to the HUD agreement. We talk to the fact that we do have a federal monitor in there. So it's at the very end of the financial statements.
Probably fell asleep by then. Okay, does anybody else have any questions or issues or comments regarding the housing authority?
I do have a question about that. But it may not, as you note, it may not fall under GASB 87 or 94, but I'll still ask it. What measures or policies do you ensure that the cost is being sent to remediate the lead specifically for meaning of staff who are non-managers and they're actually doing that because of NYCHA's record of staff who are non-managers not creating fraudulent documents?
I'm sorry, I'm not really catching the question.
What procedures do you have in place to ensure non-managers are following lead remediation, specifically in lieu of the history of NYCHA's questionable practices that were found fraud and producing of lead remediation?
Sure. From an operational standpoint, you're talking about, not financial, correct? So our lead program is overseen by our managers as well, and we have consulting on board, a major environmental consulting firm that's also working on the lead abatement program. We just announced that we completed 10,000 units of lead abatement, which is a tremendous accomplishment given from where we came from. We have significant internal controls to ensure the lead work is done appropriately and in compliance. So we have internal audits and internal controls within the lead department that reviews dust wipes. They go through significant quality assurance and quality control procedures. We have our compliance department and our internal audit department that also review all of the operations over. And so the compliance department, environmental health and safety department, and quality assurance department are 3 internal oversight departments that were required to be created as part of our HUD agreement, and have now, are fully matured and working to oversee all of the work within operations, running those checks to make sure the work is done appropriately.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, comments, or issues, I'd like to thank you for coming this morning, and have a good year.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to have a motion to go into executive session.
Moved.
Thank you. We'll take 2 minutes. Okay, thank you, everyone. And we are now back in open session. And I'd like to first thank the city for their presentation, namely the Controller's Office and the auditors, in conjunction with the audit of the City of New York. Speaking for myself, I'm very pleased of an unmodified opinion for the city. And I'd also like to congratulate the Controller on getting the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. If I got that right, it's changed so many times over the years, for the 44th consecutive year. I go back to year 1. Well, since some, but so I'd like to congratulate you for that. And now I'd like to have a motion that the Audit Committee has reviewed, based on our review of the financial statements presented to us by the Controller's Office, that we approve the financial statements and authorize the Controller's Office to release those statements.
So moved.
Okay, thank you very much. And once again, congratulations. And I look forward to having the white book. And the white book is still really a draft. The blue comes out basically in the middle of December. So is that still on time?
Aim for November.
Okay. Yeah, no, they're better than I was. But thank you, and congratulations, and good luck. I'd like to have a motion now to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Thank you.